It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and Odo's being a git to Quark. He's quoting station regulations about bar stools, largely for the lols from the sound of things, but it immediately stops when Kira turns up and invites him to lunch instead. The change doesn't go unnoticed by Quark, and he tells Jake such behaviour may be very useful indeed. We'll leave him to his schemes and pop over to the Defiant. They're on the way home from protecting a convoy, one with Cassidy Yates along as a liaison, and Cisco doesn't seem delighted by her being here. Bugger all of that, though, as we've received a distress call. Somebody from Starfleet is shipwrecked on a distinctly unpleasant planet and needs rescuing. We're the closest to her, despite being 6 days away, so off we go to help out. Not that she knows about it yet. We can't return the call for science bollocks reasons, so O'Brien's listening to her signal while he works and has learned her name is Lisa. Bashir doesn't like the idea, equating it to a form of torture, but O'Brien says he likes hearing her talk, so Bashir leaves him to it. We'll leave him to it as well and return to DS9. Quark submitted to Odo's demands about regulations, all the better to make him receptive. See, this coming Saturday is the 1-month anniversary of Odo and Kira's first date, and Quark's making a big deal about Odo not having a present for her. Quark refuses to get involved before pointing him at the promenade shops to prove it isn't about selling him something, and Odo eventually trots off to look for a gift. The exchange was watched by Jake, who wants to know more about what Quark's doing, not as a reporter this time, but as character background for a novel he's struggling to write. After making it clear nothing should be traceable back to him, Quark agrees to let Jake in on what he has planned. Back on the Defiant, Cassidy's trying to figure out why Cisco's distant with her. It'll have to wait yet again, though, as while she's talking to O'Brien, shipwrecked Lisa is able to overhear them. That brings Cisco and Bashir to engineering so we can all chat together. Long story short, Lisa's the captain of the Olympia, a ship on its way back home from an extended exploration mission. Actually, she's the former captain, as when they started poking a wibbly around a planet they found, the ship had a massive fucky boingo. Everybody scarpered into escape pods while the Olympia did a Tom Paris special into the planet's surface. That was roughly 2 days back, and as far as she's aware, she's the only one who made landfall. A lucky escape then, but not entirely fortuitous. This planet has lots of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and her meds for dealing with that are strictly limited. Bashir tells her how to ration it until we get there in a few days' time, but it's going to get very unpleasant. She also can't sleep as a result of the meds, so Cisco arranges for there to be someone in contact with her at all times, and chooses to take the first shift himself. News of the Federation at war is not particularly well received by Lisa, and she asks for a change of subject. It ends on Cisco and his personal life, with Lisa picking up on him becoming tense when he starts talking about Cassidy. He doesn't deny it when she points it out, but she's smart enough to change the subject and distract him with a tale about her own previous relationship with a civilian. Speaking of relationships, Odo's chosen a gift for Kira. Quark's impressed with the necklace, and sounds like he genuinely means it, before casually asking what evening he has planned around the gift. The question throws Odo again, so he's completely off guard when Quark suggests a holosuite and sends him up there to test programs. Jake watches him go, and Quark explains this means Odo will be otherwise engaged on Saturday night, which means he's free to arrange a little business he wouldn't otherwise have been able to. Back on the Defiant, Bashir's doing a shit job of listening to Lisa, so bad in fact that she fakes something coming to eat her just to get his attention. That does the trick, and he's deeply apologetic while switching his focus to her. Distractions are the focus back on DS9 as well. Quark's arranging his dodgy dealings for Saturday night so they coincide with Odo being busy, which is a shame as Odo's decided he's going to celebrate on Sunday instead. His first date with Kira was a complete shit show, so he's decided they should instead mark their first kiss. And that's a problem for Quark, as his buyer is a wanted criminal and will now be out of contact until he turns up on the station. With Odo around on Saturday, that will result in a quick arrest and a trail straight back to Quark. To the Defiant once more, where Lisa is proving a popular, sympathetic ear among some of the crew, so much so that Bashir has to butt in when O'Brien goes over his allotted time. Probably just as well it's his turn to talk, as Lisa's having some problems. The carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere is starting to affect her earlier than anticipated. Bashir thinks her last batch of medication is contaminated, meaning she's only got a couple of days before she does a dead. Which is going to be a slight problem, as we are still 3 days away. The good news is we can go faster. The bad news is the ship will literally fall apart if we do. There is a solution, but it involves essentially disarming, which is obviously not a great plan in an ongoing war. Sisko decides it's worth the risk, and we drain our guns to provide more staying in one piece power. Another awkward encounter with Cassidy might be why he's talking about her to Lisa afterwards. He can't put his finger on why, but he didn't want Cassidy there on the bridge. Lisa's of the opinion it's because Cassidy is not a part of his Starfleet life, and crossing that partition has created a distraction that Captain Sisko can't tolerate, even if Benjamin the boyfriend would have. Quark's having to face some hard facts as well back on DS9. He's showing Jake the merchandise that he was going to sell for a shitload of cash, and accepting that there's no way Odo won't stop it now and jail him. It seems so unfair, too, after him essentially being Odo's confidant and advisor for the whole Kira business. They leave, meaning Odo can stop pretending to be some barrels and eavesdropping on them. Quark's back in his bar with Jake and waiting for the inevitable arrest when Odo and Kira turn up in costume. Odo's decided he'll celebrate the first date after all, saying Kira was of the same opinion as Quark. Up the stairs they go while Quark celebrates, with Kira asking Odo if he really wants to let Quark smuggle on the station. He says it's a one-time thing to repay a debt, and that seems to satisfy her. To the Defiant once more, and we've arrived at the planet that shipwrecked Lisa, who just fell unconscious, by the way. Bashir reckons they've got under an hour before she carks it, and that weird wibbly around the planet means landing the Defiant or teleporting down are both distinctly poor ideas. We've got a mini-shuttle, though, so we're testing the plot armor of some main cast members by flying down in that. One bumpy ride later, and we're poking through a very wet cave. We can't detect life signs, but that's hardly surprising when we find Lisa, what with her being a skeleton and all. She's been dead for a little over 3 years from the looks of things. O'Brien thinks the wibbly around the planet must have done time fuckery to our signals, meaning we were technically talking to a corpse. All that's left for us to do is to take her home with us. We're all back on Deep Space Nine and getting shit-faced over a corpse. Sisko's taking the opportunity to talk to Cassidy about how he's been acting too, much to her relief. Lisa's input has also been accepted by Bashir and O'Brien as well, so we'll leave the gathered mourners to reflect on how their lives were improved by one that had already ended, until the next adventure. Life in Starfleet can be a difficult thing. One day you're flying along in your fancy high-tech ship, the next you're forcibly marching a guy to be murdered because some bastard teleported a space orchid. It's the sort of thing that can cause a build-up of stress, unless you're the guy who got murdered, obviously. But Starfleet takes care of its own, usually, and thus was born the idea of a ship's counselor. They didn't spend all that effort on training you at the academy just for you to fall apart because you're regularly, sucked into alien board games or some shit. But the DS9 crew aren't on a ship, usually, are they? They're on a space station, and it's not even technically a Starfleet station for that matter. So who are they supposed to talk to? The local bartender? Understandable, then, that a few of them have been storing up some problems of late, and understandable, too, that they'd find a sufficiently distant but still professionally connected person to be a suitable outlet for those problems. The result is Lisa essentially becoming the ship's counselor for a while. Even her saying she didn't personally like counselors was in service to making O'Brien see why they're useful. Which means this isn't really an episode about Lisa so much as it is about the main cast and how life, and the ongoing Dominion War specifically, is affecting them. Lisa is the sounding board upon which they air their own dilemmas, and in so doing, allow we the viewer to see things they don't really share with each other. We see the doubts, the discomfort, the awkwardness that's not generally on display from the hyper-competent faces of Starfleet, and we're more clearly shown the people underneath as a result. It's somewhat of a shame, then, that I believe the ending detracts from those feelings of disquiet. By dipping into unneeded timefuckery, we add layers of disbelief onto what is otherwise a very human story. We slap on some science bollocks that everybody just shrugs and accepts, and subsequently require the viewer to believe that not a single person during their conversations with Lisa mentioned even one stardate for recent events, or that a ship 3 years overdue was not recorded as missing. What's worse is that adding this layer was entirely unnecessary, and the alternative would have been far more impactful. The unneeded timefuckery made Lisa's death nobody's fault. The tragedy of her end could have been made more poignant if we remove all of that time wank, and despite the best efforts of our heroes, she still died just before we got to her. It's an opinion I've voiced on here before. Our heroes are far more real, far more relatable when they're brought low. I still rate The Quickening from Season 4 as the episode which best shows Bashir's arrogance, because it's the one where he failed and had to face it. Apply that thinking to this episode. Have Lisa die just before we arrive. It's through no real fault of ours, that lack of meds changing the timescale we thought was safe, but it could still leave everybody wondering if we should have taken the risk to get there faster, earlier than we did, injecting an element of second-guessing into an already vulnerable crew. Doubt is human. Regret is human. This story ends with, "Oh well, nothing to be done," when it could have ended with, "I'm sorry we didn't do more." That, in my opinion, is a missed opportunity, not just for the benefit of this episode itself, but also as another way of setting the stage for a failure yet to come. I have a sneaking suspicion that the only reason the time wibbly existed in this episode at all is because nobody thought to take it out. You see, this episode's pitch started out with the time bollocks as central to the story, the original idea being Sisko in contact with an Earth woman from 1940. It didn't really work, and the concept of a character known only through their voice became this episode instead. The time bollocks concept went from being a central conceit to somewhat of a vestigial idea during the transition. There's perhaps a lesson here about how the creative process can morph inspiration into something entirely different, and how clinging to that original spark can sometimes be to the detriment of the end piece. Before we move on to looking at the good bits, I do have one more complaint. When we establish two-way contact with Lisa, Sisko and the others start talking about the ongoing Dominion War. That's understandable in a way, as they'd want to update someone who's been absent for 8 years, but it's also a massive lapse in operational security. They have absolutely no proof that she is who she says she is, rather than a cardigan or a vorter or a founder. Even if they'd confirmed her identity beyond any doubt, they should still have kept things general. Sisko giving her pretty detailed accounts of ongoing ship movements around Beta Z is very much a no-no, and that's something he should have known after being adjutant to an admiral and liaison for an entire fleet. Okay, that's enough bitching, so let's go back to the compliments. If you're willing to not pay too much attention to the resolution, we do get a fair bit of good stuff here. We'll talk about Sisko first and his feelings of discomfort at Cassidy being present on the Defiant. Lisa nails one of the reasons for it, as it's understandable that people would want to create a clear delineation between professional and personal lives in a high-stress job. If you were here when we watched Voyager, that's the logic we applied to a strong and independent woman like Janeway using a holodeck for cheesy romance stories. There's an even more serious reason here, though. Sisko already mixed those two aspects of his life before, with his ex-wife Jennifer living on a ship with him. Watching her get turned into chunky salsa by the Borg at Wolf 359 is probably a fair portion of the motivation in him not wanting Cassidy around when he's in business mode. You could argue he's in business mode on the station as well, but I'd point out that's not an explicit combat role, whereas the Defiant is first and foremost a flying gun. We'll wrap up with a look at the B-plot then, and an examination of Quark and Odo. To begin with, it offers my favourite line of the episode from Quark: "No one involved in an extra-legal activity thinks of themselves as nefarious." It's a largely accurate observation. Those breaking laws through necessity have little choice. Those ignoring laws they consider ill-conceived are adhering to their own moral code, and those breaking significant laws tell themselves everybody would do it if they could. Very rare are the people who admit they're being scumbags, not unless they're trying to get a reduced sentence anyway, and even then it's just words they don't believe. The second point of those three is what applies to Odo's actions here. By allowing Quark to do a bit of the old smuggling, he's engaging in what the law considers nefarious activity, but it adheres to his own moral code to allow it this one time, which is in keeping with the character. As I said before, to assume Odo only cares about rules, regulations, and laws is to fundamentally misunderstand him. He cares about the ones he agrees with, and will ignore the ones he doesn't. Hence his willingness to look the other way on a presumably non-dangerous bit of technically illegal shit here. Quark laid out his valid argument for being given a little slack in exchange for services rendered, and Odo couldn't argue with the logic of it when he overheard it accidentally. Odo gives him the win because Odo agrees he's earned it. That's assuming it was accidental, as there is one other possibility. There's a chance Quark knew, or at least suspected, that Odo was in the cargo bay listening. And if that's true, then the choice by Odo was a result of direct manipulation, which would mean that Quark really did win. End of episode.
Right then, so we just need to summon up a search engine and go to the nearest social media site, yes? Yep, don't really matter which one. They're all a mixture of pornography, adverts, and white supremacy.
And you think we'll be able to find an exit from the internet in there?
Trust me, social media has its tendrils spread into pretty much every aspect of life. Sounds like a piece of piss. Thanks, lad.
Yes. We genuinely appreciate you helping us.
Well, it might not be as simple as all that. These places ain't always on the up and up, if you get me. We have to keep an eye out for thieves and con artists and the like. Oh, con artists, you say?
Look, I said I was sorry about the Dominion publishing thing.
Don't worry, boys. Knowing to be careful is the most important part. We'll be fine.
Hey, I'm looking forward to this now.
Off you pop and pack your bags, lad, and we'll be ready to go.
The three of us are about to hit the internet for realsies. Oh.